So hopefully you will have seen some of the interviews that we conducted last year with the leadership team from LTS. We will continue in 2022 with these interviews, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Bas van Buijtenen, who is the CEO and chair of the executive board of LTS. Bas, thank you for joining me.
Good to see you, Paul.
Good to see you too. Let's get straight in. I think it's fair to say that 2021 was an interesting year for all of us, and that's certainly the case at LTS too. But of course, there's been some real highlights in the LTS journey to date. Would you care to pick out some of your highlights for us?
Sure. Yeah, Paul, I think in 2021, we were, of course, busy living up to the purpose that we define as we care, we create, and we deliver. But of course, all of that was very much marked by the context of the pandemic. And so 2021, a lot of it was about keeping our people healthy and making sure that our customers continue to be delivered with the reliability that they've come to expect from us. And I think on both fronts, we've done pretty well. On all of our major sites, our on-time in full numbers, our OTIF numbers, were as good as or better than in previous years. And of course, on the pandemic response, we've been very busy making sure that we implement all the protocols, making sure we prevent infections on site, and quite nicely also making sure that we offer the opportunity to people to get injected, to get vaccinated on site. And I'm quite pleased to say that our medical team on site has administered more than 1,000 jabs to various LTS employees, including my booster jab here myself.
Wow. Certainly, I was surprised and pleased to hear that you were also issuing lateral flow tests. You were paying for those lateral flow tests, so rather than employees having to pay for that themselves, you covered the cost of that.
Yes, and so there's been a lot of work done to minimize the disruptions that we would have faced from the various, well, mostly it wasn't the infections themselves because the case numbers that we had with employees were fortunately quite modest. But of course, like any other company, we had a lot of challenges figuring out how to deal with unannounced absences because people were asked to quarantine because of contact tracing, and which in most cases turned out to be fine, but which forced you to deal with these disturbances on a short notice.
So not only did you manage to maintain performance at a business as usual level, in fact, in some ways, as you say, you exceeded that, you've managed to develop some new ideas and pushed forward with some new technologies at the same time.
Yeah, so we've seen some good traction with all the technologies that we support. So in our core technologies, transdermal and transmucosal, we signed up new partnerships. We signed up partnerships in the field of responsible pain therapies. We signed up partnerships in the field of mental health. And quite interesting also, we signed up a partnership in the field of pediatrics, which we're quite interested and excited about. And then, of course, with the new technologies in 2021, there was a strong acceleration in market interest around microarray technologies.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about microarray technologies in some of the other interviews, but the thing that fascinates me about MAP is not only is it a breakthrough, but actually the benefits transcend the whole supply chain. You can see benefits to pharma, to healthcare professionals, and to patients. It's still in its infancy, but where do you see MAP going next?
Yeah, so the acceleration that we've seen in 2021 has strongly been driven by considerations around pandemic response. Because, we were all trying to figure out, after we've developed the vaccines, how do we make sure that we get enough doses? How do we organize the whole supply chain? How do we organize all of the administration to make sure that we can give access to this jab to as large a part of the population as we possibly can? And if you think about that, you realize that microarray patches have potential benefits on all of these elements because we have the promise of providing additional stability by embedding the vaccine in these microneedle matrices, which could alleviate some of the cold chain requirements. Fundamentally, microneedles are destined to be self-administered, or at least much easier to administer than injection. And in principle, there's even the potential of looking at dose sparing, so that with the same amount of active, you could ultimately vaccinate more people. And that's where that real acceleration of MAP interest has come from in 2021. As a result of that, it might have gone unmarked, but we've also worked very hard on working on other therapeutic kind of molecules in order to advance the technology in that direction. And we had a nice breakthrough in 2021 on that front, because we were able to demonstrate a bioequivalence essentially with a large biologic molecule through an MAP kind of patch. And you know, those are molecules that would typically be considered to be too large to pass through the skin through a patch. So currently for that particular molecule, the route of administration was intramuscular injection. And here we've demonstrated that we can provide equivalence in terms of area under the curve, so in terms of amount administered, with a microarray patch. And that means that those benefits which I was just describing for vaccines are then potentially also at the disposal of more patients, more therapies, more pharma partners as a result of these type of developments.
That certainly opens up a whole new world of opportunity if you can embrace that large molecule opportunity, I guess. Wow. Okay. Well, I think you should be congratulated for everything that you managed to do in 2021. I should imagine many would have been delighted with achieving business as usual, but you've accelerated the business on again, which is remarkable. If we turn our attention to 2022 and beyond, what are your ambitions for LTS, and what do you see where the market moves in this period?
Yeah, look, well, it looks like it's going to be a busy year, Paul, because we're off to a flying start, I can tell you. But let me answer the question by looking at the various elements of our strategy. So the first pillar of our strategy is to continue to invest in our capabilities as being, you know, the premier CDMO in the transdermal, transmucosal type of space. And so what we're doing there is continuing to invest in our capacities and our capabilities. We're bringing on additional equipment in our site in the US. In Europe, we're doing that too, but we're realizing that we're going to be running out of space if we're not careful. So we're activating a number of investments to expand the buildings, which will then be able to host the further investments in equipment that we'll be doing in the years after that. We've just opened the new R&D center for our microarray program. So, you know, bringing that up to scale will be part of the agenda. And in fact, we're going to be investing in an upgrade of the whole R&D center that we have on the site here in Germany.
You talk about being a CDMO, but it always strikes me that you're perhaps just a little bit more than that, because of course you do have all of this R&D capability and the analytics behind that to be able to support pharma partners really at any stage, you know, whether they want to come to you right at the beginning of developing the new molecule or as a patch manufacturer. So you are a little more than perhaps that model suggests. Is that fair?
Absolutely, and I think that's actually a perfect description of the second pillar of our growth strategy, because you know, I think what I always say is that if you claim to be the leader in your field, you mustn't satisfy yourself simply with trying to grab as big a share of that pie as you can. You must take your responsibility in growing the pie. And that means in our case that we continue to invest, like you say, in the evolution of our technologies, in the evolution of the transdermal and transmucosal delivery route. And so what does that mean specifically? That we continue to look at that space to see, for the existing therapies, do patients really have access to what we would consider to be a state-of-the-art patch? And interestingly, somehow, you know, counterintuitively, but if you realize the inertia of the pharma value chain to some extent and of registrations, on the other hand, understandably, in quite a few categories, customers are dragging along patch formats that, you know, if you were to reinvent them today, you'd be able to make them sleeker, more cost effective, and a lot more patient friendly. And so what we've done is that we've proactively gone ahead and initiated some developments in exactly that direction, and are now signing up customers to see so what are the kind of deals that we can then make to then bring those new patches, those state-of-the-art patches, into the hands of our customers, who will ultimately bring then the best possible therapies to the patients.
So I guess the pandemic isn't quite over yet, and I guess this is something we're going to, certainly a variant of COVID will be with us for some time now. Do you see that continuing to drive creativity in this space?
I think it will, but I think it generally has once again underlined the desire that we all have to simplify life of patients, and to simplify also the value chain of bringing a therapy ultimately to a good outcome. And so what you see is that there was interest in all things that will help to bridge the gap that you have between what you can do with self-administration now, and where today you still find yourself going to a clinic or care, or relying on a healthcare professional to do the administration. So in that sense, I think 2022 is going to be a very interesting year. There are a number of things in that self-administration space which are in clinical studies. There are a number of things which are in submission at the FDA, and we have a potential of having some real acceleration of that if a number of those FDA approvals come through, if a number of those clinical outcomes look very positive. And so that would be my prediction for 2022, an accelerator year for therapies like microneedles, for other kinds of self-administration devices.
We started this discussion with we care, we create, we deliver, and that becoming a kind of mantra for the business. One of the things that struck me very keenly, having spoken to you and some of the other leadership team, is just how personally you take those statements. They're not just words, it actually means something very deeply to you and to your colleagues. So from I guess from a personal perspective rather than from a corporate perspective, what would you like to see in terms of care, create, deliver in 2022?
Look, Paul, it's an excellent point, and it is true. For me, this role, it's a job, but it's much more than that, because I do think it's a privilege to be able to contribute to improved therapies for patients. And I feel it when we're working on projects, and I see it in the eyes of my colleagues on a regular basis. You can just see that when we talk about a specific disease and potentially making a contribution to that, I often think not just about an abstract patient, but somebody that I know who is fighting with that disease today, and whom I know would benefit very much from having access to an improved therapy. And it is in those moments that I feel such a deep commitment to do exactly what we're describing, which is to deliver on that purpose of we care, we create, and we deliver. And I can only wish for 2022 that those developments that we're working on, those that will support people that I know personally, but of course all of those that will support all the other patients, will make it to the market, and will make a difference in the lives of all of these patients.
Perfectly put. Perfectly put. Thank you, Bas. Thank you for your time today. Really enjoyed talking to you as always, and I wish you all the very best for 2022 and beyond.
Thanks, Paul. Good catching up as usual.